It's one step forward, one step back for President Trump's agenda. A court has blocked his controversial tariffs, while his massive budget package that he's dubbed the Big Beautiful Bill has passed. It passed the House last week. Blake Moore, a Republican representative from Utah, was a key figure in shaping that legislation, and he's joining Walter Isaacson to talk about its priorities and the critics who say it favors the wealthy and expands the deficit. And a note that the two spoke just before the court's decision on tariffs and also just before Elon Musk's exit from the federal government to tend, he says, to his ailing Tesla company.
Thank you, Christian and Congressman Blake Moore. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Congress just passed this past week or so a big, beautiful bill, as Trump called it. But now it's getting a lot of criticism, and even Elon Musk has come out against it. Senator Ron Johnson, a Republican in the Senate, saying it will greatly increase the deficit. Is that true? Would this bill greatly increase the deficit?
There was one major stipulation. I'm a member of the Budget Committee and the Ways and Means Committee, so I've been very busy the last 6 months and even longer than that. The criticism that will increase the deficit is the fact that we already have large deficits. This particular bill is actually deficit neutral, and we required that from the Budget Committee with whatever sort of competitive tax rates that we allow for. There's a cost to that, but we've offset that completely with a very conservative estimate on economic growth, as well as spending cuts to offset the two. I wish we were solving our deficit problems. That's a longer term fix. That has to be almost a bipartisan approach. But this particular bill is deficit neutral, and the way that it's been written, to say otherwise isn't actually looking at the specifics of your assumed growth rate. We think that this economy will do very well with competitive tax rates that are made permanent, and we will see sustained economic growth at least the 2.6%, and we think we can actually exceed that.
The Congressional Budget Office said it would add about $2 trillion. Tell me what's wrong with their calculations.
So we've seen actually from 2017, when the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act took place, the CBO didn't necessarily, within a dynamic scoring, if you look at a dynamic scoring opportunity, you see economic growth swallow any particular potential of deficits that created. Our revenues have not decreased significantly in any way since we did major tax reform in 2017. This bill, we want to actually make a lot of that permanent because it's been very good for American families and businesses. And what any numbers that they're talking about there is just they are not going to assume an economic growth factor into this, where we think over time we've proven that be the case.
One of the provisions in the bill is something that you push, which is sometimes called the Trump accounts, but it's basically a credit for children, bonds for children. Tell me why that's in the bill and what that would do.
Yeah, this is not a new concept. This has actually been a bipartisan discussion for many years. An organization has named this something called Invest America. So you can see it already existing in a lot of spaces named that. This became part of this bill because we want to make sure we're investing in America's youth, and we want them to be able to take advantage of compounding interest. Any business savvy individual knows that if you invest early, you're going to get a better yield later on. It's very similar to like a 529 account just for education, but we're expanding it out so they can use it for later in their life as well. It's a very simple investment into each child born for the course of the next 4 years, $1,000. They're going to get an account that's associated with, let's call it the S&P or other types of investment opportunities, and they're going to watch that grow. They can add to it. Family members can add to it. Companies are going to be able to say, hey, we want to help contribute to this account that you have, and we'll see it grow over time. I have real concerns with, that within the next decade, the Social Security having some significant issues with the trust fund that's associated with it. We want there to be an investment earlier in folks' lives to be able to take advantage of that later when they definitely need that.
As you say, this is a bipartisan idea, these baby bonds. I think Senator Cory Booker pushed them at one point. Senator Josh Hawley, a Republican from Missouri, has also been pushing it. It's not something that's traditionally been part of the Republican Party lexicon. Do you think there's a shift in the Republican Party now to things like this?
I think this bears out that that's proof of that case, that we're thinking more about the next generation. So I wouldn't say it's a significant shift. We always believe in investing early and watching it grow over time. And I love that we have a catalyst right now. Look, this is, like I mentioned, a bipartisan concept. It getting included into a largely Republican reconciliation bill. I don't expect any Democrats to vote for this bill just because that's the way Washington works. We didn't, Republicans don't vote for Democrat reconciliation bills and vice versa. But the fact that we can get it enacted and build on the bipartisan support that this has had, I think shows that it has a really strong future.
The major cuts in this big bill that just passed the House were in Medicaid and SNAP, food stamps, food security. Are you worried that the bill looks like, and in fact does, put a whole lot of the burden on the poor in making these cuts?
No, what we're doing with respect to Medicaid and these programs is, we don't often get a chance to vote on improving these types of programs, right? These fall into what you call the mandatory spending budget side, and those don't have an annual bill that you vote on these every year. This is an opportunity to be able to say, hey, we want to make some reforms to Medicaid to make sure that it's a stronger program, especially for those that are among the traditional population, those are children in poverty, single mothers, disabled folks, elderly folks that are in a certain lower income level. Like, that's the traditional population we want to preserve. And what we're doing with this bill is simply saying, hey, we want to make sure we're cleaning up the rolls so illegal immigrants are not able to take advantage of this, because this is a program designed for U.S. citizens. And second, we want to establish the expectation to have a work requirement or a volunteer requirement as a part of this benefit. And what I'm hearing from folks is, hey, there's going to be some concerns because there's some paperwork burden and there is an administrative burden, but that's an administrative burden problem. That's not necessarily the policy idea to say, hey, we need folks to be able to work less than 20 hours a week, show they're doing that, and then they have access to this program. We hope that very, very few people will lose their Medicaid coverage from this legislation, and we just want to make sure that we're doing it in a way that's responsible, that adds work requirements. That is a concept that is very popular, and we just want to make sure that the administrative and paperwork process is such that we could get through this okay. But it is not some massive cut that is going in this bill. This is a way to strengthen the program for those that need it most.
President Trump has said that this could be improved in the Senate, and he would take some things. And one of the things he's talked about is that you actually could help with the deficit issue by raising taxes a little bit more on the rich. This is his own formulation. I think what he said was, this is on May 9th, he said, I would love to do it, frankly. What you're doing is you're giving up something on top in order to make people in the middle income and lower income brackets save more. Do you think on things like carried interest credit for people in private equity, things like that, there are tweaks that could be done to raise taxes more on the wealthy?
So you bring up carried interest. The big concern with reducing or addressing carried interest there was we made changes to it in 2017. I thought have had survivability. The more you do it, the more opportunity you take away for investment. If you have less investment, you have less economic growth, and it goes down this whole road. Ultimately, I've never been able to have a Democrat colleague of mine tell me what is their fair share. They always say, "Oh, the wealthy aren't paying their fair share." No one's been able to explain that to me. What is
no, but I'm actually talking about Trump's proposal that whether you want to do it on carried interest, which he said he might be willing to, or Steve Bannon on his podcast just saying there are things that could be raised.
Yeah, there's always going to be opportunities, the things that can be raised. Look, we've actually gotten criticized a lot from some of the wealthier individuals in our economy because of what we've done in this tax bill. Like I said, we prioritize middle and lower income Americans already with most of the provisions. You can continue to go down that road, but I've never heard anybody be able to say what is their fair share. I think the top 10% of earners pay over approximately 70% of the entire tax bill. I mean,
Well, wait, how would you answer that question?
At what point is the fair share? There's already a significantly progressive tax code that the wealthy pay in a very large amount of our taxes. So you can always increase it, but at what point will you actually decrease investment and more economic growth? That's an important consideration.
Well, what's your answer to that question?
My answer is we found a really good approach to what we've passed out of Ways and Means Committee right now. And I hope that we can keep largely this intact for going forward.
What is your feeling about Moody's downgrading the credit rating and the sense that maybe the deficit could be keeping interest rates high and hurting our credit rating?
So we have almost a $2 trillion deficit, and that has grown since the early 2000s over Republican and Democrat administrations. So this bill is a deficit neutral bill. I would love to be able to find ways to cut more from the deficit. And I think that the Trump administration is trying to find every area possible to find cuts and potential for economic growth. We can create economic growth that creates more revenue with tax policy, but you can also do it with regulatory policy as well. And you'll always see that from a Republican administration. So yes, we do need to be cutting the deficit more. Last Congress, we had a debt commission that we passed out of the budget committee. Democrats almost, there was a handful of very brave, smart, thoughtful Democrats willing to sign on to that legislation. But overall, a bunch of them said that, we're not going to do this. This is, they categorically rejected it when it was like, these have been ideas that have been done before, even in the Clinton administration. Like, we've had this before. Why are you rejecting it now? And then you also see other groups that oppose it even from the right. Like, it becomes tough when you have to actually cut deficits. But if we continue to run $2 trillion deficits year in and year out, and after COVID, that expanded it significantly. Like, yes, we're going to have issues with our bond rating. And we need to be willing to carve it out. What we're doing in this particular bill is making sure that we have strong economic growth. Because if we don't continue to have strong GDP, then there's really no chance to ever be able to cut and trim our deficits if we don't have strong economic growth. If you want to just go and overly tax, and make a significant burden on companies like we were prior to 2017, then we're ultimately going to have, economic downturn, and we're not going to be able to cut our deficits because, without economic growth as a major factor, as a part of that equation, and it doesn't end well.
One of the things that Elon Musk has criticized this bill for is that it doesn't do anything to try to enact some of the DOE's, the Department of Government Efficiency, cuts he tried to make. I understand on a bill like this, it's not something you can do with discretionary spending that easily. There's all sorts of technicalities. A rescissions bill may have to come down the pike. But are you confident that there are going to be the cuts that were done by the Department of Government Efficiency, or has that all gone by the wayside?
Thank you for highlighting that in this particular bill, this reconciliation bill, there's a lot of rules and things that have to go within a parliamentary procedure, and a lot of things within the discretionary side that can't qualify for it. Things even to Social Security can't qualify for it. So there's limitations on what you can do in this particular bill, but a rescissions package is we're very, very hopeful that the White House will work with us on sending us over a rescissions package because that actually is a simple majority vote. You do not need a 60 vote threshold in the Senate. I think a lot of my Democratic colleagues are just sort of checked out. Anything associated with the Trump administration, they're not going to support, even if it's a smart type of reduction in spending. Hopefully that changes over the next few months. We'll have to see how that plays out. Most of this work will be done in the appropriations world. And that is what comes next. As soon as we get this bill done, we have an appropriation cycle that we're already working on. Hopefully we can find significant change. And even if we don't rescind those, like pull that money back, you can actually hopefully transfer it to next year's budget. There's a savings associated with that. Because a lot of times government agencies will have extra money towards the fourth quarter and they'll use it up just because. No, if you constrain that, you can actually transfer it into a more productive use of that money next fiscal year. So there's all sorts of ways to do this. I'm hopeful we will actually see some rescissions package coming up as well.
You were part of a caucus in Congress called the DOGE Caucus, and I saw that Congressman Jared Moskowitz, who was a Democratic member, that just said, hey, we haven't met in months. It's been a complete failure. Is it true that y'all haven't really been meeting?
So we were hopeful that the White House, the DOGE from the administration side, that was led by that team was going to be more engaging with us, and we didn't have many opportunities to engage. We met in December, and we had a really good connection, a really strong outlook and potential. They got busy in their silo, and we got busy doing the reconciliation bill. The caucus is still formed. There's still opportunities as it becomes a legislative opportunity. Right now, the administration side, they went and did their siloed work, and we have an opportunity as some of those rescissions become a potential to actually, enact legislation. That's where some of the work that we'll be doing. So it's fair criticism by Jared. He's a good friend, and I really appreciated his involvement on this. And hopefully we can, as it becomes a legislative opportunity, do more work there.
You've been an advocate of a more targeted approach to tariffs. Give me your impression of the tariff things that are happening now, and whether the on again, off again. I have to get up in the morning trying to figure out which ones are on, off, being delayed. Well, you say that. Is that a problem for the economy when we don't get up in the morning and know exactly what's on and off on tariffs? And is there a better way to do that?
So, absolutely. I love this question, being able to engage on this. I'm a member of the Trade Subcommittee on Ways and Means, and I recently shared my thoughts with the ambassador over the USTR, and I said, look, think of the good work that the first Trump administration did with respect to 301 tariffs, largely directed at China, and that work that President Trump did then existed through an entire Biden administration without any changes. That's how you know you've done smart, good, sound, long-lasting policy. And it wasn't even codified in legislation. This was codified in executive order that President Biden looked at and said, hey, we're not going to touch this either. I said, that is a great opportunity to enhance and look at that area where you could improve on that, and also deal with de minimis, because I think de minimis has been taken advantage of. That's when you allow anything under $800 to come in tariff-free, and people game that system. So that's a lot of some of the work that I've been talking about. I'm great if tariffs are used to help us get non-tariff barriers out of the way, get into better negotiations with some of our allies, our trading partners across the world. But no, I don't like the turmoil and the constant back and forth. I hope that's just for a moment. Long-term high tariffs is economic policy. Moving forward, that would be very difficult on our economy. That eventually would raise prices. But we have been taken advantage of, and so we need to do some of this type of stuff. And I'm hopeful, and I'm confident that the Trump administration can get to the right spot, and hopefully sooner than later.
Congressman Blake Moore, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.